Hey everyone, in this quick tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can set up SSH tunneling through GCS for Airbyte Cloud. First things first is we're going to want to obviously have a GCS account and head over to your dashboard. Inside of your project, you're going to go over to this navigation menu and you're going to go down into Compute Engine and head over to the VM instances. Within there, we're going to create a new instance, and in this VM, this is what we're going to use as our Bastion server. I'm going to leave the default name. I'm going to go ahead and go down to my regions and select US West 1. In my zones, I'm specifically going to choose US West 1C for this demo, but you can leave this to whatever, but remember that this zone is going to be permanent. For the machine configuration, I'm going to leave this to E2. With Airbyte, we do recommend that you scale this to around 4 to 8 CPU cores as well as 8 gigs of memory. So I'm going to go to the high CPU section and choose this one right here. We're going to leave all this as default. I'm going to go down here to the service accounts and actually just change this to my service account. Down in the firewall section, I'm going to allow HTTP traffic as well as HTTPS traffic. Now in the advanced options, I'm going to go ahead and click down this drop-down menu. Under networking, we're not going to be changing much here. Under security, you're going to notice that by default, when you connect to a VM using the console or G Cloud, your SSH keys are going to be generated automatically. Everything else is going to be default, and I'm going to go down here and click create. All right, so now that our instance is created, you can see that we have an instance name, our internal IP, and our external IP. What's really going to matter is the instance name and the external IP. First and foremost though, I'm going to go down here where it says set up firewall rules, and you'll notice two things. One is this default allow SSH. You always want that allowed, and by default I believe that in your firewall rules it will come allowed. But the other big one that I created manually was this allow Airbyte Cloud rule. Now to create a new rule, you're obviously going to go up here to this button and click create firewall rule. In that, and I'm going to simulate that here since I've already created it, I named it allow Airbyte Cloud, and I left most things by default except for the source IPv4 ranges. All these IPs are being allow listed through our firewall in GCS now, and these are the IPs specific to Airbyte Cloud, and you'll see that in the Airbyte UI when we go to set up the source. I will also leave these in the description below just in case you need them, so you can just copy paste all of them into the text input that you see right there when you're creating this rule, and it'll tag all of these. Down below in the protocols and ports, you can click this specified protocols and ports option, check TCP, and then allow 22, 80, and 443 ports. Those are just going to be for specifically SSH and then HTTP. Those are already enabled by default, but it can't hurt to allow it through here as well. You're going to go ahead and click save or create, whether you're creating that rule or creating the rule from scratch, and then we can head back over to our VM. I'm going to go ahead and click into our instance here, and now we have more information on the actual VM itself. Now, I'm going to be using G Cloud, which is the command line tool that comes with the SDK for GCS. You don't have to use that. If you want to SSH or use the terminal on your instance, you can go down to this menu here on the top left, and you can open a new browser window. You can open the G Cloud command. You can do a bunch of other things to SSH into the client here, but I'm going to go into this manually and do it in my terminal. So when you first install G Cloud, you're actually going to run G Cloud init, and it'll run you through a whole list of options to set up your settings within G Cloud on your terminal and specifically point to your project and instance. Now, when you're doing that, make sure you choose the zone that you chose for your instance, and zone and region, they're kind of interchangeable, but it's very important that you get it right. Since I chose US 1C, my settings are pointed towards US 1C, not US 1A, not US 1B. So make sure you have that down before you run through those settings in G Cloud. Since I ran it already, I'm not going to do it again. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run G Cloud -- project, and I'm going to grab my project name, which is going to be elliptical feet here. I'm going to add beta, compute, SSH, and then the instance name which you can find right here, right after. And what this is going to do is essentially going to allow me to SSH using G-Cloud from my terminal into our VM that we just created. Now, as I set it up, it generates an SSH key for me for my laptop or for my local machine. And so I'm going to enter the passphrase for it. And when you set up G-Cloud, it'll ask you to do this and set up the passphrase. So this could be whatever it is you set. Now I've verified that I'm in my instance, but we need to create another set of SSH keys to allow Airbyte Cloud to connect to this VM to use as a Bastion server. So let's go ahead and do that. First, before we leave our VM, you'll see that if I cd into the hidden SSH folder, we should have a set of authorized keys. Now, if I show what's inside of the authorized keys, you'll see that Google has added an SSH key pair, but this is going to be for your local machine only. But this SSH key is protected by a passphrase. This new passphrase we're going to generate will not have one, so that Airbyte Cloud can use it to get into the VM to then tap into our database that we're trying to pull data from. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit exit and clear this, and I'm going to generate a SSH key using this command here. So it's SSH keygen -t RSA -b 2048 -mpem, which is the formatting here, -f, and then it's going to go into my SSH folder, and I'm naming it my GCP key. And this is going to create that key pair here. Now, when it asks you to enter a passphrase, I'm going to leave it empty so that there is no passphrase. It's going to ask you twice. I hit enter twice, and it's now generated both a private and a public key for us. We can verify that by going into our SSH folder, and you can see that my GCP key is in here, as well as my GCP key.pub, which is our public key. Now we need to take this public key and transfer it over to our VM. Now I'm just going to manually do that for the sake of this tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and cat my _GCP_key.pub. It's going to show me the contents of it. I'm going to copy that. Now that I've copied that key, I'm going to go back into our VM. I'm going to go and nano the authorized keys file. And down below the key that it's added, I'm going to say Airbyte key. I'm going to paste that key. I'm going to do Control O to save it, and then Control X to exit. Now that we've done that, I'm going to exit this again. Now that we've exited our VM, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to connect to our VM from the local machine using the key that we just created. So if I go up here, and this command is going to be SSH-I, I'm going to give the file path to the key we just generated on our local machine. And remember, we're not using the public key, we're using the private key. And then I'm going to add in the username that we are going to authenticate into our VM. And for me, that's justin.chow, but that's going to be different from you. And then at the IP address of our VM. And remember, that is going to be the external IP address of the VM, not the internal. I'm going to go ahead and enter. It's going to ask me, do I want to continue connecting? And I want to say yes. Permanently added to the list of known hosts. And now I am in my VM. So now that I have validated I can connect to my VM, let's now go into the Airbyte UI and use the platform to connect Postgres to BigQuery using SSH tunneling. All right, so I'm here now in Airbyte. I'm going to go up here and click new connection. I'm going to click set up a new source. I'm going to select Postgres. I'm going to name this Postgres SSH so I know which one it is. For the host, I have all my information right here that I will copy and paste. Now, under the security options, I'm going to leave SSL modes as require. In the SSH tunnel method, you have two options. You can use password authentication or SSH key authentication. For our case, since we went through the process of generating SSH key pairs, we're going to go ahead and use the key authentication. Now, the SSH tunnel jump server host, this is going to be our external IP from our VM that we created. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. SSH connection port is usually 22, so we're going to leave that there. Our login username is going to be justin.chow, which you saw in the terminal. And then the SSH private key is going to be the private key that we just generated from the local machine. Now I'm going to click upload file to make this easy and select the my GCP key file, and that'll automatically put the contents of my private key within the text box. I'm going to go ahead and select xmin and click setup source. All connection tests have now passed, so it's now successfully authenticating to the Bastion server through SSH and then attempting to connect to the database, which it successfully did. So we're gonna just select BigQuery here, and now you're just going through the normal process of setting up a connection with a source and destination in Airbyte using SSH tunneling for better encryption. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments section below, but we'll see you in the next video.